Hey everyone, welcome to Lock On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. LeBron James has his streak of 30-point plus games ended in Orlando, and it was a good thing for the Lakers. We'll talk about it next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube, zooming towards 10,000 subscribers. That's where you go to see the show, participate in a vibrant and increasingly large community of people, many of whom were quite angry going into Tuesday's game in Orlando. They'll be a little bit happier following that game today, and we'll see what happens on Wednesday night. The Lakers do win on in Orlando on Tuesday, 129-110. And normally, Andy, you beat the Magic even on the road, and even with all the caveats of like, hey, the Lakers aren't very good either, and hey, Anthony Davis isn't there. But you know what? Orlando had been one of the hottest teams in the NBA.
They really had
won 8 of 9. They'd been successful at home, and so you know what? This actually is not just, oh, you beat Orlando. It's you beat Orlando by 19, and they've been playing well. So kudos to the Lakers.
Well, to put this in perspective, Orlando was favored in this game. They were, the last I checked, they were 4-point favorites in this game. So if nothing else, the bookmakers in Vegas, who know an awful lot about this stuff, they had the Magic giving up points. So if in that sense, even if you want to say that it's underwhelming that this would be considered an achievement, it was nonetheless an achievement.
And we'll update and see what happens for Wednesday. LeBron James, after the win, said regarding his availability for Wednesday, we'll see what happens when I wake up, how he feels there. Back-to-backs are still back-to-backs, but LeBron had a very solid game, 28 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. And if you want to have some optimism that he'll be available to play and feeling good and spry, he wasn't loafing about. He earned his paycheck on Tuesday, but the Lakers were not ultra reliant on him. The LeBron James lift-o-meter was relatively low for this one, all things considered. I mentioned in the open, Andy, his streak of 30-point plus games ended on Tuesday. That's a good thing for the Lakers on a night where they win by 19.
Yeah, this was the ideal formula during this period without Anthony Davis, which is LeBron plays very well, which he did, but it doesn't feel like he's carrying the team, which is absolutely different. The Lakers had 6 players in double digits, which feels like you got to go back to like the Kobe Powell days for that to have happened. It's been a minute, if nothing else. Thomas Bryant had 21 points, 8 of 10 from the field, plus 10 rebounds. Patrick Beverley, who we're going to get into, 14 points. Lonnie Walker had 10. But then you had Troy Brown, who has been slumping over the last couple weeks. 6 of 7 from the field, 3 of 4 from behind the arc, 15 points off the bench. And Russell Westbrook, 15 points, 13 rebounds, 13 assists. Russ was terrific.
He was. And it was a plus
game.
18. I mean, I think that's the thing about, like, there have been games where Russ put up the numbers and all that. And you kind of look back and it's like, was the impact there? Did the Lakers benefit from all those stats and all those minutes? And I'm not trying to resurrect the empty stats Russ thing, but sometimes the numbers don't reflect the impact. I thought Tuesday they absolutely did. And a plus 18 is plus 18 only, in 30 minutes of basketballing. But it was a very efficient night for the Lakers. They shot over 55%, which makes a huge difference for their defense. When you listed out all the guys that had double digits points, like Austin Reeves wasn't one of them. So, and I don't mean to pick on Reeves, but you get 4 of 10 from 3 from Patrick Beverley. By the way, all of his shots, basically except one, from 3-point range, which is not a bad shot chart for him, especially if they're going in. Thomas Bryant was 8 of 10. Westbrook was 6 of 11. You mentioned the 6 of 7 from Troy Brown. When the Lakers get that kind of efficiency from supporting players, they have to take advantage of it. They have to. And it also, and Darvin talked about this after the game, Andy, a good field goal percentage and effective offense and efficient offense is going to make them less vulnerable on the defensive side of the ball, even when they go small. And they were smaller on Tuesday, certainly than a lot of the lineups Orlando put out. But if you're not trying to match up in transition, if you're not cross-matched, if you're set, if Orlando misses, and they did, you can get a rebound. You're able to do that. And the Lakers got beat up a little bit early on the offensive glass, but after that did a really good job. They out-rebounded Orlando over the course of the game. And so that stuff all worked. And I think it does start in part with an effective and efficient offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned Westbrook, or you mentioned the rebounding, and Westbrook had 13 rebounds, all defensive. And the reason I mention that is because Russ was really intent in this game at getting the Lakers to pick up tempo. Like the minute he would grab a rebound, he was running, and he put so much pressure on Orlando's defense. Like there were a lot of shots that Russ created either on kickouts or him kicking out, and there was swing, finding a guy in the corner. And so much of that just came from the pressure that he put on the defense, collapsing Orlando. It helped them that Paolo Banchero was in foul trouble this entire game. He picked
4 points.
Yeah, he picked up his 4th and 5th fouls within, I think, the first 3 minutes of the third quarter, which was part of, by the way, the delightful trend.
I'm glad you mentioned this because the Lakers were up by, what was it, 10 at the half, which was a small disappointment because that lead in the second quarter got up as big as I believe 16, and it was down to 10 at the half, which is fine. It's like 10-point lead in an NBA game on the road at halftime. That's pretty good. But Orlando scored the first 2 buckets of the second half, and you're like, oh God. And the Lakers, especially after what we saw the other night, are the worst third quarter team in the NBA. And you're like, oh, this is not going to end well.
What's funny, actually,
and they finished the third quarter. They lost that quarter by 1. Okay, great. Like I thought the way they finished the third when Orlando got it down to like 5, I believe it was a fantastic sign.
Yeah, every time Orlando actually in this game would start to make a push, I thought the Lakers reacted pretty quickly and pretty decisively, pushing the advantage back their way. You mentioned that third quarter. We had talked about after the Dallas game and just that fiasco third quarter where they allowed 51 points to Dallas, tying a franchise record for that team.
30.
Yeah.
A 30-point minus, differential is like in typical NBA for people who maybe are new to the game. Like if most of the time, if you give up a minus 30 in one quarter, you might have scored like 4 points. The Lakers scored 21 points in that quarter, which is good, but it shouldn't be a minus 30. And it was, and you have to go back to the 50s, I believe they said after the game, to find a quarter that bad for the Lakers.
I had noted how the Lakers entered that game as the 4th worst third quarter team in terms of net rating in the league. And their net rating was something like minus 10. I don't remember the exact number, but it was about minus 10 range. And I said, they're likely going to go down after this third quarter. They went down to minus 13 something after one game. That is damn near impossible. Like
it's statistically, it's quite impressive actually to be.
They went from 27th to 29th after just one game in terms of net rating in the third quarter. So it was really nice to see them, get their bleep together during the third quarter, react well to these pushes. It definitely helped that Banchero was not there and just seemed completely out of sorts this entire game. And, this was a game where it felt like, it was interesting. Troy Brown said afterwards that he credited Patrick Beverley for a meeting that they had talking about third quarters and just the need to be better in them. And it sounded like from what Troy said, that I guess Beverley either talked a lot during this thing or decided this is something we need to talk about as a team. But whatever the case, improved communication was a big theme, and it seemed like the Lakers really
At the very least, they rebounded when it was either give up the lead time or build the lead back out time. Again, they started the quarter with a 10-point lead. They finished it with a 9-point lead. That's fine. We're going to talk more about Pat Bev before we're done here. Talk a little bit more about LeBron. Do want to mention the rebounding a little bit more and what Westbrook was doing in that pace, because it is related to what Darvin Ham was talking about after the game in Dallas on Christmas. And also we have a couple comments about what people were saying. We noted the anger on the website, the Locked On Lakers YouTube page, regarding Jeannie Buss and the team generally. We have a couple of those comments, which we will share with you next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks. And Laker fans, if you've not signed up yet for Prize Picks, you are missing out on daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. They offer superstar players as well as bench players. Just pick 2 to 5 players, predict whether they will notch more or less than their Prize Picks stats projections. And Prize Picks offers projections on everything from NFL to women's college basketball to even disc golf. Just use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. They offer safe, fast withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up, play daily fantasy sports, and first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. Don't forget that promo code Locked On at the sign up for the instant match. If you are not playing PrizePicks, you don't know what you're missing.
Darvin was asked a couple times in a couple different ways about the teeny tiny lineups, and experimenting with that stuff. Lakers got hammered in the third quarter with their big lineups. They got hammered with the small lineups, but obviously when you play Russell Westbrook at center, it gets people's attention. What Darvin was talking about is, in terms of kind of justifying what they were looking for, is the ability to push and the ability to play much faster, to try to get easier baskets, to try to get into their offense a little quicker and all that kind of stuff. And I think we saw a better example of it because Lakers did go small relative to Orlando during this game. And they can't do it if they can't rebound. And so when you talk about Westbrook's aggression on the boards and Westbrook's aggression pushing the pace, it's not, I'm not saying they're going to run out and play 5 guards all the time. That's a good idea. But relatively speaking, when Thomas Bryant isn't in the game, they're often going to be small. And the only way that Ham's going to be able to get the small lineups, which he clearly likes, even before the Dallas game. I mean, Darvin's been criticized for going small. They have to be able to rebound. And so to win the rebounding battle was a significant one. To play with pace, I thought, was significant. I only wanted to point that out because it was a big talking point on Sunday. And there were times, at least I thought on Tuesday, where you saw at least what it's supposed to look like the benefits in the trade. And there's always going to be a trade-off, how they can sustain it when they want to try to go small. And it starts with rebounding at work. Brian, we should talk a little bit more about him too, because these types of games are critical for the Lakers to be successful. The only point I was trying to make is like they got on the glass, and after a tough start, I think, how many offensive rebounds did the Magic end up with?
Magic ended up with 8.
8. I think 6 of them were in the first quarter. So they cleaned that up really well, following, a bad beginning. And so, they got the ball up the floor. They shot at an efficient percentage, and they did it with balance, which also helps on the defensive side. So like all of that, just a glimpse of what it's supposed to look like. But yeah, Thomas Bryant, I looked up his shot chart, Andy, for the season. Something like, and I couldn't tell if it had been updated for the game Tuesday, but it wouldn't have changed much in terms of percentages. Around 80-something% of his shots are either at the rim or 3-pointers, which is exactly what you want Thomas Bryant to be. Like, here's a dude who really understands what he's supposed to go run like hell on the break and make yourself available for pick and rolls with LeBron James. Like, he gets it. And it's really fun to see.
I've talked about this before, and seeing Thomas Bryant on a game-to-game basis now, because his one season with the Lakers, he barely played. So, and
Mhm.
you know, I've not been watching the ins and outs of the Wizards over the last few years. He's been hurt for a lot of it anyway, but you notice that he's just a smart player. I
Mhm.
think Thomas Bryant makes a lot of smart plays while he's on the floor. He's not a playmaker per se, but he's a better passer than I thought he would be. I think he reads the floor really well,
Mhm.
and not just reads the floor in terms of where everyone else is, but I think he reads well in terms of where he's supposed to go.
Yeah,
And like,
and where the ball is supposed to. I agree. It's not
yeah,
fancy, but it's the right play. It
yeah.
moves things along.
A-
Absolutely. Totally
a-
agree.
And in terms of the rebounding issue, and this wasn't necessarily a night where you saw it from Patrick Beverley, but he is somebody that for a guard is actually a very good rebounder. He was, like you mentioned before, 4 of 10 from behind the arc, and Beverley has become a very polarizing, if not just straight angering player among the Laker fan base. And you and I have been frustrated by Beverly at
Doesn't
times
play
over the
well. I mean,
course.
it's just been it's
Yeah,
not it's like it's pointing out what is the obvious.
well, sure.
The
But
first 25 something 27 games of the year, he wasn't very good.
right. But it also, he becomes, emblematic or even an avatar of the small issues for this
Mhm.
team and the small backcourt,
No
the
question.
small 1 through 3 with Lonnie Walker playing up, as a very undersized small forward. Looking up some of Patrick Beverley's numbers, the last 10 or so games, he's actually been, in terms of the offense that was just dramatically missing and I think hurting the team early in the season, he's been shooting I'd say the last probably dozen games, somewhere between high 40s, low 50s from behind the arc. He's been averaging close to double digits over the last 5 games. He absolutely has been averaging double digits, and that's not even
He's
counting
got
tonight.
six double digit games this season. Or I'm sorry, four double digit games this season, and they're all in the last 6 games. And the
And
other two, he scored 8 and 9. So
it,
he's definitely been averaging over his last 6. He's well over 10 points a game.
and it's creating this interesting thing now with the Lakers, because I still think on balance, this small backcourt with Lonnie at the 3 and some of the small incarnations of this team closing out games, stuff like that, I still think it's untenable. I still think in a lot of ways it creates unnecessary issues, even acknowledging Darvin is working with imperfect choices. But Beverly now is playing in a way that, combined with Schroeder falling into an offensive slump, you wonder if maybe one has to be removed from the lineup, and I from the starting lineup, and I think one does. Maybe it ends up Dennis Schroeder, and you find a way to try to make it work with him and Russ, which is very, very awkward. Or Schroeder isn't playing as much, whatever. But it's worth noting this, just because you and I have both spent a lot of time, as well as like a lot of fans, I think a lot of media, pointing out what's going on with Beverly. He's somebody whose name is in trade rumors a lot, because he's the only mid-sized contract the Lakers have, much less mid-sized and expiring. And he could end up possibly getting traded out of necessity or whatever. But he has actually been playing much better. And I think, if nothing
Yeah.
else, it's worth mentioning.
It makes a huge difference for the Lakers. And again, when he's scoring 10 points a game or a little above, which he has over the last, certainly the last 6 games, he's shooting 39% from 3 for the month. And when he's doing, that's what they got him for.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's doing those things, he is way more playable. And if he's making 35%, 38% of his 3-pointers, you can work with that. When he's making 27, like he shot in November, or 19, like he shot in October, that doesn't work. When Troy Brown and Patrick Beverley and who have not been offensive contributors give you 29 points between them. Am I doing the math here? Again, I clicked away from the box score there for a second. Yeah, 29 points between the two of them. Like that's an enormous boost to your offense. And players who have not been good being good, and Beverly and Brown, we'll see if this is more than a 1-game blip. Beverly has shown signs, and maybe that hamstring was an issue that was sort of talked about a lot, didn't cost him a lot of games, but maybe was bugging him more, or maybe he's just, he's an older player who saw his shooting fall off last year. It was the thing that we were both concerned about when they brought him in. Like, is he, when it comes for older players, it often comes quickly. But at the very least, the last month, from a 3-point shooting standpoint, he has been a net positive for the Lakers, and a badly needed one, particularly over, again, like, since the middle of the month or so. Earlier in the month, was sort of a sustained, the first 3 or 4 games kind of sustained the December results. But, since like the Boston game, for example, where he hit 2 of 3 on the 13th, he's been quite good from back there. And if that continues, it's a big deal for the Lakers.
It's actually
Andy,
interesting, just real quick.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Over the last 15 games, 10 games or whatever, 3-point shooting has actually not been a problem for the Lakers at all. Like, their overall percentages on the year are still low because they began historically bad for, the opening 15 games or whatever. But the last 15, 10 games, certainly like the last 5, the only guys on this team who really aren't making threes, who shoot them at any volume, are Russ and LeBron. And in the case of LeBron, to be totally honest, I don't really even necessarily, you don't want him taking a lot if he's not making them. But all things being equal, the floor is supposed to be spread for him. He's not supposed to be the one spreading the floor. So if the worst thing going on with LeBron, the way he's been playing, and in AD's absence, I think he's been playing very well. If the worst thing you can say about LeBron is that he's not hitting threes, I'm not going to complain much.
Yep. To your point, 8th in the league in 3-point shooting over the last 10 games, 19th over the last 15. Again, 19th, not great, but it's tolerable. Up around 35.5% over the last 15, closer to 39%, 38% for the last 10. So that is, if they can keep that up, that'll certainly make a big difference, particularly, again, while AD is, they have to shoot the ball well with AD. We saw it happen. Dallas was sort of the exception that shows what you're talking about. When they can't shoot the ball well, they are in big trouble. Speaking of LeBron, Andy, he quietly pulled something off of his social media feed. But it just goes to show the internet is forever. That's next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to bowl season, esports. They got it all at BetOnline.net, plus sports podcasts. And if you love those, which you obviously do because you're listening to one right now, they got that content over at BetOnline as well. So it's always the fastest, easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in action. Bet online where the game starts.
In April 22nd, to be specific, LeBron James noted on Twitter that he said, I can/will not, in all caps, miss the postseason again for my career. This bleep hurt, all caps, HURT. Okay, back to watching these games. It was noticed by a very clever person, someone, checking this stuff out. He has deleted that tweet.
Yeah. Yes, he has. The internet, side note, the internet, by the way, is, and this leads at times to, you see this every single year. Some guy gets drafted into the NBA or NFL, and people go through their tweets and uncover something they sent out when they were like 15 that's either homophobic or racist. And I obviously don't condone what's being said there. I don't like the idea of just trolling for mistakes people made when they were teenagers. I think it's a bunch of bad faith actors who aren't doing anything to try to better the world.
How are you about going back to April? What do you think about going back to April of 2022? Well, too far when you're talking about a grown-up like LeBron?
I was going to say, considering that LeBron was 36, no, I think it's fair game at that point.
I'd be honest with you. I thought that was a bold tweet at the time that I would not have made if I were playing for the Lakers.
No, I would not have made that either. I think a lot of people at the time did actually note that LeBron was going out on something of a limb with that tweet. I will say this, though. if the Lakers somehow buck their current odds and their current situation and make the playoffs, I fully endorse the idea of LeBron tweeting out something to the degree of, told y'all, never lost any faith whatsoever, told you I was never missing the playoffs again, and acting like he never deleted anything in the first place. Gaslight the bleep out of us, King. Go for
Never
it.
happened. So that is we thought was funny. More relevant things that we saw. It was a lot of anger on the YouTube page throughout the course of the week, certainly after the Christmas loss, and we talked a lot about what the Lakers quote unquote owe LeBron for Tuesday's show and whether they do or don't. One of the more interesting comments that was left in reply to that was from Applesauce 451, because there's been a ton of anti-Genie stuff out there, anti-Pelinka stuff, but two bus people that aren't in the crosshairs for most fans are Jesse and Joey, who are Jesse is does the scouting, and Joey runs the G League team and other stuff like that. Applesauce 451 asks, the two younger brothers, they are in Lakers management. Why is there never serious in-depth discussion of their future role? After all, if they got fed up, they could be the swing votes in the trust decision to sell the club. Are they part of the decision-making process? Have they been promised a larger role, etc.? Where those guys fit in is kind of fascinating to me, because they are doing a good job. Like,
Yes.
Joey's work is a little harder to translate to how it impacts the Lakers directly, in terms of the general manager work of the G League team and some of the other ancillary stuff that he does around the club. Jesse's is a little more tangible. Scouting, that's one of the drafting. It's one of the few things they've done well over the years. But the idea of, say, putting them in charge, whether now or in the very near future, it's real sticky, I think, particularly given the team's history with family members in prominent positions.
Yeah, you and I have both been pretty big fans of Joey and Jesse for a while. We know Joey better than Jesse. We about probably 10 years ago for ESPN did a sit-down interview with Joey when he was first starting to work with the G League team, and a lot of people didn't know who he was. Like, I remember fans may not remember this, when the Lakers won the championship in Orlando. Dr. Buss surprised Joey by telling him to go up there.
Yes,
and
Joey went out
accept
and received the trophy. Yes.
Right. And Joey had no idea this was coming. And Dr. Buss intentionally did this as a gut check for his son, because he wanted to see how Joey would react. And Joey reacted really well. But what's funny is that was the first time I had ever seen Joey. I didn't know who he was. I thought Dr. Buss decided, in what I thought was a really cool gesture, to have a fan come up and accept the trophy on behalf of the team. Like some fan that he knew was in Orlando and been like Orlando's biggest Laker fan. And Dr. Buss decided to do something really awesome for this Laker fan holding it down in Central Florida. Like, I did not know that was Joey.
No, it was a genuine surprise. And nobody knew who he was.
Right. And Joey told us that story, among other things, when we interviewed him. And you and I both walked away from talking with him for like 20 or 30 minutes, very impressed with him. I can tell you that both he and Jesse, who we don't know as well, I'm going to talk to him a few times, but
neither one of them are particularly active public figures.
Right.
Neither one of them do a ton of interviews.
They're both very well respected, though.
They are, and again, like I said, the results are there. And where there was,
I think you mentioned, though,
call it, of Jim around the league in terms of his work ethic and how much he had earned his position, i.e., he had not. Both Buss brothers, the younger Buss, the sons, are very well respected for putting in the work, putting in the time, starting at the bottom and working their way up.
But you had mentioned too the Jim of it all, and I can understand where Jeannie, and I don't know if this is the case or not. I know that Jesse and Joey, their voices have started to, over the last year or so, become more prominent within the organization. Yeah. I know that they've started to have a larger seat at the table. You know, this has been well documented by many people that they are starting to gain more of a leadership
They don't have
presence within the
veto power
organization.
over stuff, but they're in the conversations.
Right. I don't know for a fact that Jeannie has any reluctance about potentially promoting either of them to essentially Rob Pelinka's role or just below Pelinka, something like that. But if she did,
over Linda's dead body, Andy.
But if she did, though, it would not surprise me at all if it's just because that is a job that, unless you are like R.C. Buford or Sam Presti, you basically have that job knowing at some point you're
To being the
going to
coach.
lose it. And it is very difficult, even under the best circumstances, to fire family. And it wouldn't shock me if Jeannie is reluctant to go down that road with Joey or Jesse, even if she has way more respect and a better working relationship with Joey or Jesse, which just raises the question of, if it's not Joey or Jesse and Rob Pelinka ultimately proves himself in Jeannie's mind as being unsuitable for this role.
If dear listener, you can wrap your head around that.
Will she be willing to look outside the literal or proverbial family for that role? Because it shouldn't be Joey or Jesse or somebody already in the inner circle and nobody else considered. That's how organizations are poorly run.
That's Kurt. Kurt's still here. I think the good news is, realistically, logistically speaking, neither one of those guys should be in a position where they would be next in line. They really aren't. And I like both of the work that they're doing, but Jesse shouldn't go from the role he's got to running the Lakers. You know, Joey shouldn't go from the role he's got to being, you know, the GM of the team. Like, that shouldn't be where they go next. So there is time to figure this stuff out, promote them naturally, and do all that stuff. And hopefully the Lakers will have figured, you know, all these things out, or, you know, in the 8-10 years or however long this could take, may not own the team anymore. I don't know. I do want to do a show, you know, not for today, and, you know, obviously for Wednesday into Thursday, we want to, you know, reacting to the game and stuff, what it would mean for the Buss family to sell a team. Because in some ways, I think you could see a lot of positives, but I do think Lakers fans in this moment of deep frustration are losing sight of some things that would change that they might not like. So we'll get to all that, but I think the point you're making is the larger one, and the more important one is, if they do make a change, where do they look? And who is it that Jeannie leans on? So maybe we even talk less about that if the Lakers go out and spank those Miami Heats on Wednesday and carry it. They got a chance. They got, you know, Atlanta lost on Tuesday night badly to Indiana. They are kind of a team in a bit of disarray. And then you finish the trip in Charlotte. I mean, these are all winnable games. So we'll see what happens for the Lakers. Locked on Lakers on YouTube. So we're going to watch the show, see our faces when we tell jokes and things like that.
And when we copy Locked on Rockets.
And we would copy Locked on Rockets. I've never listened to it. But it's an excellent show. Make it your second listen of every day. I just thought I missed something from what that guy was telling me, that we really were pilfering. And we'll see everybody on Thursday.